You are already being filtered right now. In every room you walk into, every message you send, every conversation you attempt with someone who operates at a level above yours, you are being processed through a system you cannot see, by a mind you don't fully understand, using criteria no one ever taught you. And here is the part that should disturb you most. You are probably failing that filter without knowing it. Not because you are unqualified, not because you lack intelligence or ambition or substance, but because the way you are presenting yourself, the signals you are unconsciously broadcasting, are triggering the exact psychological responses in powerful people that close doors before they open. The subtle desperation in how you follow up. The over-explanation in how you introduce yourself. The way your body language shifts when someone important enters the room. These are not small things. To a high-status mind trained, consciously or not, to detect weakness and utility, these signals are deafening. Powerful people did not reach their position by being generous with access. They reached it by being selective, by operating a constant, ruthless, largely subconscious evaluation of everyone in their environment. Friend or threat, asset or liability, useful or irrelevant. The evaluation takes seconds. The filing lasts years. And most people, talented, driven, deserving people, spend entire careers on the wrong side of that filing system. Not because the game is rigged, but because they never learned the rules. Here's the first rule, delivered without softening. Powerful people do not respond to need. They respond to value. They do not open doors for those who knock loudest. They open doors for those whose presence makes the room more interesting, more useful, more strategically advantageous. The moment you approach a powerful person with visible need, with the energy of someone who requires something from them, you have already lost. Because need is the opposite of value. Need is a drain. And powerful people have spent their entire careers learning to identify and avoid drains. What you need is not a better pitch, not a warmer introduction, not more confidence in the conventional sense. What you need is a complete cognitive restructuring of how you position yourself in the presence of power. A blueprint, precise, psychologically grounded, and ruthlessly effective, for making powerful people not just notice you, but want you in their world. Machiavelli understood this 5 centuries ago. He wrote about it in language so honest it terrified the powerful people who read it, because he was describing exactly what they did, laid bare on the page for anyone willing to study it. The Prince was not a guide to becoming a tyrant. It was a manual for understanding how power actually selects, elevates, and discards people. How influence is built not through honesty alone, but through strategic perception. This video is that manual. Updated, applied, operational. Subscribe to Mastering Influence now. Not as courtesy, as armor. Because what you are about to learn does not stop being used against you simply because you are not watching. The people in your professional and social world who already understand these principles are already using them. Every day you remain unaware is a day you remain outmaneuvered. The blueprint starts now. Before we go deep into the framework, you need to understand what is waiting at the end of this video, and why every section before it is not optional. At the close of this script, we reveal what Machiavelli identified as the single most dangerous and misunderstood principle of social ascent: emotional detachment as leverage. Not detachment in the passive sense, not indifference or coldness, but the precise, deliberate severing of your need for approval from your pursuit of influence. When you master this, something shifts fundamentally in how powerful people perceive and respond to you. We are calling it the detachment paradox, and it is the principle that makes everything else in this framework work. But here is why you cannot skip to it. Applied without the preceding framework, detachment reads as arrogance. It triggers hostility instead of curiosity. The sequence matters. Every principle in this video is a layer. Remove one, and the structure collapses. Now understand the cost of what you do not know. If you do not understand selective visibility, you will continue showing up in the wrong places with the wrong energy, invisible to the people who matter and overexposed to those who don't. If you do not understand value framing, you will keep approaching powerful people as a petitioner, someone who needs, rather than an asset, someone who contributes. The subconscious signal this sends is irreversible in most contexts. If you do not understand controlled scarcity, you will make yourself too available, too eager, too readable, and readable at the level of power we are discussing is the same as vulnerable. Multiply these errors across months, across years, across every significant professional and social opportunity you have attempted to build. This is not abstract. This is the precise mechanism behind why talented people plateau, why certain doors never open regardless of qualification, why some individuals seem to ascend effortlessly while others, equally capable, arguably more deserving, remain static. The difference is not luck. It is not connection. It is framework. Stay in this video. Every word compounds. Let us begin with the principle that most people violate before they have spoken a single word. Selective visibility is not about being seen. It is about being seen correctly, in the right context, by the right mind, at the right moment. These four variables operate simultaneously, and failing any one of them produces the same result: irrelevance. Most people approach the challenge of connecting with powerful people as a proximity problem. They believe that if they can simply get close enough, attend the right event, join the right organization, find the right introduction, the connection will follow naturally. This belief is the single most common and most expensive mistake in social strategy. Proximity is necessary but not sufficient. And worse, proximity without the correct positioning does not create neutrality. It creates negative impression. The person who attends the right events but projects the wrong energy does not leave those rooms as a blank slate. They leave filed, and the filing is rarely flattering. Here is the psychological mechanism at work. High-status individuals have developed, through years of being approached by people who want things from them, an extraordinarily refined threat detection system. This system operates largely beneath conscious awareness. It is processing information about you continuously. Your posture, your eye contact, the speed of your speech, the topics you choose to raise, the questions you ask, the way you respond when they are distracted or interrupted. Every signal feeds the evaluation. What triggers the negative filing is a cluster of subconscious signals that collectively communicate need. Over-eagerness, excessive agreement, explaining yourself unprompted, laughing too quickly. These are not character flaws. They are fear responses, the behavioral output of someone who is aware of a status differential and is trying to compensate for it. But compensation is visible, and visible compensation reads, at the subconscious level of a powerful mind, as confirmation of inferiority. The antidote is not to suppress these responses through willpower. It is to restructure the internal state that produces them. This is where selective visibility becomes a cognitive discipline rather than a tactical maneuver. The goal is not to be in the right room. The goal is to be in the right room as the right version of yourself. Grounded, purposeful, self-contained. Someone who is present in that environment because they belong there, not because they are trying to get somewhere from there. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must appear self-sufficient even in moments of dependence, because the perception of self-sufficiency is itself a form of power. People align with those who appear not to need alignment. They invest in those who appear not to need investment. Now apply this operationally. Selective visibility means choosing your environments with strategic precision. Not every event, not every room. The specific spaces where powerful people in your target network already congregate, not because you are chasing them, but because you have genuine, demonstrable relevance to those spaces. Industry conferences where your expertise is applicable. Publications or platforms where your thinking adds to conversations they are already having. Professional communities where your presence makes sense on its own terms, independent of anyone you hope to meet there. This is the critical distinction. You are not attending these spaces for them. You are attending because you belong there. And their presence in those same spaces creates the conditions for organic recognition. Familiarity built this way operates through a well-documented psychological phenomenon, the mere exposure effect. Repeated low-pressure exposure to a person or presence increases positive evaluation over time. When a powerful person begins to recognize your face, your name, your contributions, in spaces they respect, doing things they find credible, before you have ever formally introduced yourself, you have already begun the relationship. You have created recognition without triggering resistance. And recognition, at the subconscious level, reads as known quantity. Known quantities are safer than unknowns. Safer means more accessible. More accessible means the door is already slightly open before you raise your hand to knock. The historical record is clear on this principle. Benjamin Disraeli, before becoming one of Britain's most powerful political figures, spent years positioning himself in the literary and social circles where political power congregated, not as a politician, but as a writer, a wit, a presence worth noticing. By the time he sought political influence directly, he was already known, already filed as interesting, already perceived as someone who belonged in those rooms. The positioning preceded the ascent. It always does. Here is the question. Answer it honestly. In the comments right now, because your answer reveals exactly where in this framework you are currently failing. Think about the most significant professional or social connection you have ever tried to build with someone more powerful than you. Now ask yourself, what did you lead with? Did you enter that interaction as someone who had something to offer, or as someone who needed something to gain? Most people already know the answer. They led with themselves. Their goals, their background, their ask. Dressed up as conversation, wrapped in politeness, but fundamentally about what they needed from the exchange. And they wonder why the response was tepid, why the follow-up went unanswered, why the connection never materialized into anything real. Now let me show you what it looks like when someone gets the framework right, and how completely it changes the outcome. Consider the trajectory of a man we will call Adrian, mid-30s, exceptional at his craft, a strategist in the financial sector with a genuine, rare ability to identify structural risk patterns before they became market events. Technically brilliant, professionally invisible. The network he needed to crack was old, tight, and deeply suspicious of outsiders. The figures at its center had been approached by hundreds of Adrians over the years, talented people with credentials and ambition, and nothing sufficiently different to justify the cost of engagement. For 2 years, Adrian tried the conventional approaches. LinkedIn messages, conference introductions, mutual contact referrals that went nowhere because they were generic. His name attached to someone else's lukewarm endorsement with no specific reason for the powerful person to care. Nothing moved. Then he changed the framework entirely. He stopped approaching. He started positioning. He identified the specific intellectual conversations that the figures in his target network were publicly engaged in, through their published writing, their speaking appearances, their known professional preoccupations. He began contributing to those conversations, not to get their attention directly, but to build genuine, visible presence in the spaces they occupied and respected. Over 8 months, his thinking became part of the landscape. His name appeared in contexts they already valued. When the introduction finally came, through a contact who had observed his work and mentioned him specifically, it arrived with context already attached. He was not a stranger asking for access. He was a known quantity requesting a conversation. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. 3 months later, he was inside the network. The framework is not magic. It is sequenced, patient, and precise. And it works every time it is applied correctly. Her name was Claire, and she had everything the conventional wisdom said she needed. The credentials were impeccable. A first-class degree from a respected institution, postgraduate work that had been genuinely recognized in her field, and 7 years of experience that had produced measurable, documented results. She was articulate, composed in most situations. By any objective professional standard, she was ready. What she was not ready for was the room. The room in this case was a private industry dinner, the kind of event that doesn't appear on public calendars, that you only know about if you already know someone. And that functions less as a professional gathering and more as a social sorting mechanism for the people who actually hold influence in her sector. She had gotten in through a contact, a single, slightly tenuous connection who had vouched for her presence and then spent most of the evening on the other side of the room. She was on her own. And she was acutely, physically aware of it. The awareness started in her posture. She held her glass slightly too tightly. She smiled a fraction too quickly at anyone who made eye contact. When someone senior introduced themselves, she over-explained her credentials in the first 30 seconds, not because she was asked, but because the silence of not explaining felt more dangerous than the vulnerability of revealing too much. She was trying. Every visible thing about her was trying. And trying, in a room full of people who had long since stopped needing to try, was the most isolating signal she could have broadcast. There was a moment, she identified it later in the forensic self-analysis that followed, when she had the opportunity to connect with the one person in that room whose attention could have changed everything. He was a senior partner at one of the most consequential firms in her industry. He had been standing at the periphery of a conversation that had just dissolved, momentarily unattended, nursing a drink and scanning the room with the particular expression of someone who is bored but alert. She approached. She had rehearsed something like this. She introduced herself cleanly, stated her name and her work without over-elaborating. So far, adequate. Then she made the mistake that cost her the moment entirely. She told him she had been hoping to meet him. 5 words. Innocuous on their surface. Devastating in their subconscious signal. Because what those 5 words communicated, to a mind trained to process social information at speed, was, "I have been tracking you. Your attention is something I need. This interaction means more to me than it does to you." All of that. In 5 words. Delivered with a smile, received as confirmation. His response was gracious. He was a professional, and professionals in his position are practiced at gracious exits. He spoke for 2 minutes. He asked her one question, listened to half the answer, and found a reason to move. The reason was real enough. Someone across the room. A gesture of acknowledgement. A natural departure. But the departure was also a decision. Filed. Eager. Filed. Needs something. A filed. Not now. Probably not later. She spent the rest of the evening trying to recover ground she didn't know she'd lost. She approached 2 more senior figures with the same underlying energy. Slightly elevated, slightly performing, slightly desperate in the way that only registers subconsciously, but registers completely. By the end of the night, she had collected 4 business cards and had genuine reason to believe the evening had gone reasonably well. None of the follow-ups were answered. Not because the people were cruel, not because she was undeserving, but because in the subconscious ledger of every significant person in that room, she had been filed in the category that powerful people avoid. High maintenance, low utility, needs managing. The filing was invisible, the cost was not. 6 months later, she learned through a peripheral contact that 2 of the people she had met that evening had brought a new voice into their advisory circle, someone she had never heard of, someone who, by any objective measure, had credentials no stronger than her own. The difference, she eventually understood, was not what that person knew. It was how they had positioned what they knew, and what they had never revealed about what they needed. She had never learned the framework. She paid for it with years. Now we build the complete operational framework. Every principle, every step. The full architecture. Principle 2. Mirroring with precision. Mirroring is one of the most documented phenomena in social psychology. The subconscious tendency to feel comfortable with people who reflect our communication patterns, energy, and behavioral rhythms back to us. It is the mechanism behind why certain people feel immediately familiar, immediately trustworthy, in ways that are difficult to articulate but impossible to ignore. Dangerously effective social climbers use this deliberately, but the word deliberately contains the danger, because mirroring that is detected is not just ineffective, it is actively repellent. It reads as mockery, as manipulation, as a performance of alignment that exposes the absence of genuine connection. The precision required is this: mirror values and communication architecture, not surface behavior. If a powerful person is direct and economical with words, become more direct and economical, not as imitation, but as calibration. If they signal that they value independent thinking over consensus, demonstrate independent thinking. If their communication style is analytical rather than emotional, make your contributions analytical. This is not inauthenticity, it is translation, presenting the genuine substance of who you are in the language that registers most clearly to the mind you are trying to reach. Principle 3. Value framing. Never approach with what you need. Approach with what you represent. This is the principle that requires the most preparation and the most discipline, because it means doing genuine work before any significant interaction, understanding the specific challenges, preoccupations, and strategic priorities of the powerful person you want to reach. Then, positioning your skills, thinking, or access as directly relevant to those priorities. Not in a transactional way. Not, I can help you with X, therefore meet with me. But in the ambient, low-pressure way of someone who simply is the kind of person who thinks about the things they think about, who operates in the domains they find valuable, who brings perspectives they haven't already encountered. The framing happens before you speak. It is in where you are, what you are known for, what you publish, discuss, build, and contribute in the spaces they occupy. By the time you are in the same room, the value frame is already established. Principle 4. Controlled scarcity. Always leave something unfinished. End conversations slightly before their natural conclusion. Do not answer every question completely. Leave a thread that invites further engagement. Do not accept every invitation. Your absence from some interactions makes your presence at others more significant. The psychological mechanism is the Zeigarnik effect, the well-documented cognitive phenomenon where incomplete tasks and unresolved patterns occupy mental space far more persistently than completed ones. When you leave an interaction slightly open, you become a cognitive presence that continues after you have left the room. The powerful person finds themselves returning to the thread you left dangling. This is not game playing. It is the deliberate management of cognitive real estate. And in a world where powerful people are constantly bombarded with complete, fully explained, fully pitched presences, the one that is slightly unresolved becomes the one that is remembered. The detachment paradox. The keystone principle. Here it is. The principle that holds the entire framework together, and the one that is most consistently misunderstood. Emotional detachment in social strategy does not mean indifference. It does not mean coldness, arrogance, or performative disinterest. It means the complete removal of your need for their approval from your interaction with them. This is a precise and surgical distinction. You can be warm, engaged, genuinely interested in a person, and simultaneously completely unattached to what they think of you. These states are not contradictory. The detachment is not from the interaction. It is from the outcome. Here is why this is the most powerful principle in the framework. The moment you need someone's approval, they can feel it. Not consciously, not necessarily, but at the subconscious level of social processing that powerful people have sharpened into a near-clinical instrument. Neediness creates a gravitational pull that distorts every signal you send. It makes confidence read as performance. It makes warmth read as strategy. It makes every contribution feel like a bid for validation. Remove the need, and every other signal clarifies. Your confidence becomes actual confidence. Your warmth becomes actual warmth. Your contributions land as genuine value because there is no invisible ask attached to them. And here is the paradox. The person who does not need your approval is the person whose approval you find yourself wanting to give. Powerful people are drawn to those who do not appear to need them, because such people are rare, and rarity is the foundation of value. Here is the step-by-step architecture of the complete framework. Step 1. Map the environment. Identify the specific spaces, platforms, and communities where your target network congregates. Assess which of these you have genuine, demonstrable relevance to. Step 2. Build presence before contact. Contribute to the conversations they value, in the spaces they respect, consistently and without agenda, for long enough that your name and thinking become familiar before your face does. Step 3. Frame your value before the interaction. Know specifically what you represent that is relevant to their world. This is not your biography. It is the answer to the question they will ask subconsciously. Why does this person belong in my world? Step 4. Mirror architecture, not surface. Calibrate your communication style to the patterns of the person you are engaging. Not to please them, but to be understood by them on the terms they process most naturally. Step 5. Leave the thread open. End every significant interaction slightly before its natural conclusion. Give enough to create genuine interest. Withhold enough to make continued engagement their idea. Step 6. Execute the detachment paradox. Before every significant interaction, explicitly release attachment to the outcome. You are not there to get something. You are there because you belong there. The interaction has value on its own terms, independent of what it produces. Hold this as operational truth, not aspiration. This framework does not produce immediate results. It produces inevitable ones. Because it is not built on impression, it is built on positioning. And positioning, unlike impression, compounds over time. You now hold the framework, 6 principles, a complete operational architecture for building connections with the most powerful people in any room. And you are still exposed. Because here is what this video did not cover. What happens after you get in? The specific social dynamics inside powerful networks that destroy new entrants who don't know how to navigate them. The silent hierarchies. The loyalty tests. The moments where the wrong move, made with the best intentions, signals to everyone watching that you don't actually belong. Getting in is phase 1. Surviving and ascending inside is the game that almost no one is prepared for. And the casualties inside powerful networks are just as real as the people who never got access. They are simply less visible because failure inside a powerful circle is never announced. It is simply the slow discovery that the doors that opened have quietly closed again. That is what the next video covers. The internal politics of powerful networks. The specific behaviors that mark you as someone who belongs. And the specific behaviors, often mistaken for virtues, that mark you as a threat to be neutralized. The end screen is live. Click it now. You built the access. The next lesson is how you keep it. The game does not pause, and neither should you.